Hello, this is Brother Timothy Earl Hoskins coming to you again from the Lord's House of Prayer in Jackson, Tennessee. It's another wonderful Sabbath, very beautiful day, and there's really a lot of tragic events that have been happening lately, and some you hear about and some you don't. We know about what happened in Orlando with an Islamic terrorist killing, going into a homosexual club and killing a bunch of people with a gun. Of course, I think they claimed it was AR-15, but it wasn't that. It was something else. And I'd like to make a kind of a comment on that. We need to pray for those victims, the families, and all that are going through such a terrible tragedy. Also in Orlando, we want to remember the parents of the family of the child that was drowned by that alligator. That's another tragedy. There's tragedies going on in the Middle East and Israel, where they're firing rockets at Israel on a daily basis that nobody ever hears about because the media won't report it. It doesn't fit any kind of narrative that they have, so they don't talk about it. Well, once again, we see the media and the progressives in this country come out against guns. And I just want to take a moment to touch on that. I'm pro-gun. I believe people ought to own guns. I think anybody that is not a felon or doesn't have any kind of mental issues be able to buy any gun they want. One thing that I believe that people need to look at, if you go back and look at all these tragedies that have happened, and I put videos up here, and I believe that a lot of them have to do with people not being able to forgive other people for what they've done to them or what they believe about them. And it just burns up in them until they do this horrific act of violence. If you go back and look, and the rule is, just like if you look at what happened in Columbine years ago, if you look at what happened in Aurora, Colorado, if you look at what happened in Sandy Hook, if you look what happened in Orlando, if you look what happened in the Mennonite community, even at the church in Charleston, South Carolina, the shootings in Chattanooga, if you look at all of these places, these are places where the individuals that went to, either they were gun-free zones or they knew there weren't going to be guns there. And this is something that needs to be looked at. And frankly, I believe that any organization, any company, any church, any school that declares their area a gun-free zone should be required to provide armed security for the people that visit these establishments or the people that go to school there. They ought to be required. That's one reason these events happen at these places, because the individuals know they're not going to be challenged. They're not going to be taken out before they accomplish what they want to accomplish. This would really, I believe, cut down on these tragedies happening. But for some reason, the media, the government, our leaders will not address this. And it's really a shame, because this would be the number one way that we could cut down on these tragedies. Having said that, I want to ask you to continually pray for these individuals that are involved in all these horrific incidences and all these tragedies and all the loss of life. Continue to pray for our leaders and our government and our churches. Nation of Israel, the United States, we're going through some really tough times, and it's going to get, if we don't get back to God and we don't pray and we don't put God first, it's going to keep getting worse, because you're hearing a lot of talk now about taking people's rights away, about having secret courts, about putting people on probation and making them saying that they're guilty, and then they got to prove their innocence. That's exactly backwards the way this country works. If we ever lose the freedoms in the Constitution, then we're going to be living in a totalitarian state like they had in communist Russia. or like in some third world country where you got a dictator that keeps his foot on everybody's throat. And that could happen here if we lose those rights and freedoms. And with that will be freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom to own a gun, freedom to peaceably assemble, freedom from illegal searches and seizures. This will happen if we don't stand up against this. And we need to stay in our prayers. And I also would like to encourage people to fast. I fast one day a week along with my prayers, and I think that's a good path to be on. I think fasting does help your prayers, and I think it helps your relationship with God. I want to read today, I'll just read a little bit. It's in Ecclesiastes. And it talks about how there's a time and place for everything. And I want to read these scriptures that deal with that. It's chapter 3, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 7. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. And verse 8 too. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. And if you're reading Ecclesiastes, it talks about the vanity of man, and that, you know, it rains on the just and the unjust, and the rich and the poor. And it talks about all being vanity. But it tells you there that to me, this is just a common sense. These are common sense scriptures. Of course, we know it says there's a time to kill. Of course, the Ten Commandments says, "Thou shalt not kill." And I've touched on this in other videos as well. People that go out and murder individuals are guilty of this "Thou shalt not kill." But in Ecclesiastes, it says there is a time to kill. Well, what if you're sitting at home and somebody breaks into your home and is going to, you know, kill you or your family or your children or something like that, and you have a gun and you stop them and you kill them, or you have a knife and you stab them and you kill them? Well, I think that's what that means. I think it's common sense, and that there may be a time that would happen, and I pray that it never happens in anybody's life that they have to make that choice, because taking somebody's life would be a horrible thing to do, no matter what the circumstances. That's why I like to pray for our men and women in the military for what they have to do. It's not something we were put on this earth to do, and I believe that we were all put here for a purpose, and that's to help people and to be better people ourselves every day. And I've said this before, I believe that people should wake up every morning trying to be better than they were the day before. And whatever that means, if that means talking to one more person about the salvation that's in Christ, talking about your relationship with God, helping somebody else, smiling at one other person, lending somebody else a helping hand, giving somebody else a little extra money that you don't have, a kind word, anything that you can do better than you did yesterday is good. I don't think people should wake up, and I believe too many people do wake up with the idea that, I know I'm going to commit sin today, and I can't help it, and I ain't going to try to do anything. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, and God will take care of it. And, God will forgive you your sins if you ask Him and you repent. But I think that's a bad attitude to have. You should try to treat people better than you've been treated. Even if you were treated poorly, treat the next person better than you were treated, then everything gets better. If you treat people worse than what you've been treated, then nothing will ever get better. It's just a cycle that keeps going in a downward spiral. And I think that's where we're at now in a lot of situations. People take vengeance on themselves instead of leaving it in the hands of God, and try to get back at people who've hurt them or injured them. That's just no way to be, no way to live. And it goes back to not being able to forgive people or situations. I don't think it means you're friends with whoever you forgive, or your best buddies, or you invite them over for dinner, or go out to a ball game with them, or hang around with them. It just means you let that go, so that doesn't come between you and your relationship with God. It talks about in here how there's a time to plant and a time to harvest what you planted. You got your certain time and your certain seasons you need to plant, and you got your certain time, certain seasons you need to harvest. It tells us that we're going to have times we love something and times we hate something. That's just that just happens every day. We have those. Because you hate something doesn't mean you have to destroy it. So we need to in this country get back to putting God first. We've got, and you got to pray for our next presidential election, because I fear greatly that no matter who wins, we're just going to keep moving further away from God. You got in Donald Trump a person that holds his Bible up but says he's never asked God for forgiveness. And you got the president we have now. It doesn't matter. He said, these are quotes that he said, it doesn't matter what God you pray to. And then you got Hillary Clinton saying that it's all right if it's in, you keep it in your church building, but it shouldn't come out of there. That's where your relationship with God needs to begin and end at, is in a church building. Well, anybody that's a true person of God knows that's not true. That should be something you carry with you every day, and you allow to guide your life. And it's going to get worse for people of faith. It says there's a time and a season for everything. And we know that in the end times this is going to happen. And I'm really beginning to feel like we may be entering that phase. That there's going to be more persecutions of Christians and people of faith, and Jewish people as well. Nobody will condemn Islam for what it is. It's a religion of hate, a religion of violence, and it's a shame that people are afraid to stand up against it for being called names, or being threatened, or being talked about. But just remember that there's a time and a season for everything that God does under everything on earth. There's a time and a place for it, and a season for it, and we need to remember that, and we need to be vigilant in our prayers, in our conversation, and we need to stand up for God, and we need to stand up for the people of God and be there to help one another. And I just want to encourage you. I thank you for your comments and your prayers, and I continually pray for you as well, and I ask that you continually pray for our country, the nation of Israel, and the leaders in our government and our churches. This is Brother Timothy Earl Hoskins. This is the Lord's House of Prayer in Jackson, Tennessee. Thank you, and God bless.